impossible to fish on a reef.
Can't get near it half the time because the pots are all over.
And it's impossible to fish.
So, you know, our anchors are hung up, our people get hung up.
Last year I have lost 2 anchors.
The lines caught in their props. We got our anchors snagged into the pot lines.
Every rig right down the road.
Our divers are seeing ghost pots.
And I don't think people realize how many pots there are out there.
This is the problem. All these traps. Pretty soon they're going to be out on the reefs just collecting fish 24/7.
Because the pots are there 24 hours a day. So they have a better chance of getting the fish than we do.
Like after the pots went up, 2 weeks later, I was lucky to get 3 to 4 fish off a single wreck.
The commercial guys have come along and they have dropped their pots and their nets all over these reefs, and they're scooping up the fish that are meant to be caught by the recreational people and the kids who we take out fishing.
You're talking about 2 dozen of traps per line, every line being roughly 1,500 feet. Every time we drift across, we end up getting hung up. Our jigs, our rigs, our sinkers, our anchors end up getting hung up on these wire screen baskets or the connecting lines. And they are strung across our reefs like a web.
The problem is having the pots on the reef is you can't get the fish on the reef because the pots are clogging the reef.
Pots on the reefs are an issue for 2 reasons. One, you have your gear on the bottom. The gear is set up in long strings of gear, so while the pots themselves are relatively small, the troll lines span long distances on the bottom. Secondly, you have the surface gear, such as buoys, marking the gear, and if that gear is in the way, your boat can't drift around them, nor can you anchor in the areas.
Commercial fishermen can set an unlimited number of these lines on a reef site, and they can leave them in place for months at a time. In this way, just a couple fishermen setting hundreds of traps and thousands of feet of trap line on the bottom can pretty much dominate access to an artificial reef site.
This is a great depiction that we see year after year of what's taken place of the radar reflectors that we currently see, or the devices known as high flyers. Each one of these little dots indicate a high flyer, which is the start of a trap line. You can see where they're all set up over the structure, and if you match the radar screen to the charts, you'll see that all that structure you put down to hold fish is basically covered with a web of traps that restrict our access to that reef site.
And now I can't even basically go on there because all I do is lose gear, lose anchors, and basically fight all day long trying to keep my sinker on the bottom without tangled up in the lines down.
Well, my biggest problem with the pots on the reef are the locations of them, of where they are. They always seem to be right around the wreck I want to fish or the rock pile I want to fish, and it makes it real tough to anchor up a boat or have an anchor in and have my guys fishing without getting tangled up on all their gear.
Those half-day trips constitute better than 80% of my business. If I can't take those people out and catch them fish in 4 hours and bring them back to the dock happy, I don't have a business anymore.
We're actually at this point in time starting to avoid it and actually doing a little bit of less fishing because the kids don't want to go out there and get snagged.
It's just not the way it should be. The laws were written for those artificial reefs for recreation and, you know, charter boat and head boat use and not for commercial use.
These high flyers have gone away because the commercial people don't want us to know how many trap lines are actually out there now. That's why they've switched to small flags that you don't know they're there until you're right on top of them.
It's basically stopped the use of the artificial reefs with the design, and anglers are totally disgusted. So they want to go back to be able to fish on it. You can't fish on there with pot gear. It's just as simple, it doesn't match.
Just fish 24 hours a day. We have 2 hours to get the fish. An hour out, 2 hours of fishing. If we can't catch them in that period of time, the party is bored and unhappy, and they don't come back.
There's a ripple effect to the economy when people get discouraged from fishing. For an example, if someone wants to go out on a charter boat, they may drive an hour, 2 hours, first of all, to get to the boat. and then it may take an hour to get to where they're going to fish. And they've spent a great deal of money to be there, and they may have brought family members on top of it. And so if they're spending more and more of their time on fouling gear, it becomes discouraging to them to want to continue to fish. And when they go back to shore, if they're disappointed, they may not stop at their local pub to celebrate the day that they had fishing. They may not stay at the hotel. They may not come back anymore. So the ripple effect is not only from fishing and tackle shops, but it could be the hotel industry, restaurant industry, certainly the charter boats. So it's very important that from an economic standpoint that we correct this issue.
The commercial potters, trappers are running rampant on the artificial reefs. The artificial reefs are outside every major inlet up and down the Jersey coast because they are paid for by recreational fishing money, both in the form of excise taxes that we pay on tackle, which comes back to us, as well as donations that we personally and we as clubs make to the artificial reef program.
We actually donated money for 2 Army tanks to be sunk on the Axel Carlson. I fished them once, and that's all I could go and fish on them. It was so fouled with gear, we couldn't do anything with it. We can't fish it.
These reefs were all donated by funds from everybody in the state of New Jersey, and it's unfair that the commercial guys, commercial fishermen, are able to put pots there and fish 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the pots take anything that's there. So us recreational fishermen really don't have a chance of fishing on those reefs.
Should be user in, user out. If you didn't pay for it, you don't, in my opinion, have the right to monopolize it.
My name is Frank Macalik. I'm a local scuba diver and also a reef rescuer, and it is time to get these pots moved off the public reef.
We need to get those pots off the reef.